Hello, I'm back in my Sokovia toy box with Thor, and today we're going to implement the logic for the battle at the old church. Our mission is to protect the Doomsday device from the hordes of Ultron's robots who want to activate this thing, or in our case, destroy that canister. But before I do that, though, there is a logic connection that I forgot to make in my previous episode. So I want to make sure I cover that. The logic diagram that I posted on my blog shows this connection, but I want to make sure you don't miss it because I know not everybody looks at those logic diagrams. And the connection that I forgot to make is that when the mission giver's dynamic trigger here turns off the radar marker for the mission giver, we need to do a new logic connection here. When this is deactivated, turn around and turn off this dynamic trigger. Without this connection, you can walk away from Luke Cage here and then turn around and approach him again, and you'd get the mission instructions a second time. So that would be bad. One other thing I want to point out is that in my SHIELD helicarrier build video, Clinton had recommended another option for the carrier, and that is to use Calhoun's Command power disk. So I've done some restyling on my carrier here with that power disk, and I really like the way that looks. I think that looks a lot better. I like that much better. That looks a lot more like the color and style of the SHIELD helicarrier. So thank you, Clinton, for that suggestion. I am definitely going to use that. If you don't have that power disk, then the options that I gave you in that original video will still work. But if you have that power disk, that is much better looking. So I like that. And then I need to go ahead and clear that replayer before I can save my toy box. And I went ahead and hooked this button up to the mission giver's enemy or friendly wave generator, so that when this button is pressed, it defeats that wave. And you can see the yellow link there, which control I'm talking about. And I also hooked this up to the replayer on the helicarrier, that when the button's pressed, it clears it. And then I dropped a second button over here and hooked that up with a new logic connection to the level starter, so that when the button's pressed, this starts it. So now I have a very easy way to take Luke Cage back out of the toy box and clear the replayer over there before I save. And so again, I get in the habit of doing that when I'm working in here. When I load up the toy box, first thing I do is that button so I can continue working. Okay, now on to the old church. And I've already done about a half an hour of prep work for this, putting down the controls that I need, and it looks like there's a lot of them, and there are, but this is not difficult, so just follow me step by step through this. But let me show you what I've done first, and then we'll hook it all up. So I've placed down a time delayer and the usual controls for a mission giver. So I've got a dynamic trigger and a radar marker. And like I mentioned last time, we're putting the mission givers down dynamically, so I have a friendly wave generator here for that. For the enemy waves for this battle, we have 3 enemy wave generators. And for each one of those, they also have a logic gate and a time delayer. And I'm going to show you how to hook these up. So these 3 controls here go together, these 3 controls go together, these 3 controls go together. And then we also have a counter and one more enemy wave generator for the final wave. And in addition to that, I've placed some locators around that I'm going to show you, including this one here, which will be for our mission giver, and our treasure canister. And this is this is Odin's treasure, and this, let me pick this up, this is out of the Gameplay Toys drawer. This is from the 2.0 Assault on Asgard toy box game, And if you don't have that, you can use the safety dome, which is also in the Gameplay Toys drawer. And it's set up mostly the same way. Alright, and then on each of the enemy wave generators, well, let's start with the mission giver. So I've set the wave on this. Oops, not that. I set the wave to be Black Cat. She's going to be my mission giver. She's towards the bottom of the list, so that's why I put her in here ahead of time, so you didn't have to watch me scroll through that. This is going to be enemy wave generator number 1, number 2, and number 3. The wave on all of these is configured the same, so all 3 of these have 2 single BX droids and a dual BX droid. These are from the Twilight of the Republic playset. So I have 2 and 2. And then this first one is connected up to locators, like you see there. So I'm reusing the one in the park. I'm reusing the one behind those buildings that I put down last time. And then I've also got 2 more locators over here. So I've placed one here in the middle of this street. Notice which way the blue dot's facing. And I placed another one over here in this street. So that's the first enemy wave generator. And the idea here is I want the enemies to look like they're coming at the church from every possible direction. So this first enemy wave generator is connected to this locator back here and the one in the park and the 2 over here in these 2 streets. So when those enemies spawn, they're going to come running at this canister from those directions. The second wave generator is connected up to this locator, which I've placed here. And notice the blue dot's facing toward the church, and it's behind this debris pile to kind of hide the generation. It's connected to another locator over here in this street, another locator back here, and I push this back a little ways so that the corner of the building hides the generation. So those 3. And then the fourth one, where was the fourth one? Well, let's look. So first one was that street, second one was the rubble pile, third one is over there, oh, fourth one is in the park again. Alright, and then the last enemy wave generator, number 3, this one is connected to this locator back here. I'm reusing that. I'm reusing these 2 locators back here, and I dropped a 4th one over here around the corner from this building. So I have some enemies that'll be coming this way. So they're going to be coming into this old church from every direction, which is just like you see it in the movie, so that's important. Alright, and then the final wave generator for the last wave. The wave on this one is set up with 5 shielded BX droids. So these are the tougher version with the shield, which makes them harder to kill. And these are connected to the park, to that locator in that street between the 2 white buildings, the one over on the corner over there, the last one that I showed you, and then behind these 2 buildings. So it's connected up to this locator back here, that locator there, this one over here around this corner, the one around the corner over here, and this one back over here. Alright, so that is everything that I've done ahead of time. All those configuring of the waves and scrolling through those lists, connecting up all those locators, that takes time, so I did that ahead of time. Alright, let's start with our mission giver. So this is what's going to generate them, and we're going to connect this one up to the locator here in the old church. That's where we're going to put our mission giver. And for the properties on this friendly wave generator, We're going to leave those off. We're going to take generation delay to 0. We're going to turn this on because we don't need generation effects, and we'll leave that off. And once again, we're not going to do anything with the generated friend options because this is a cast member and those options don't apply. Alright, for the radar marker, we're going to connect that with an actor connection to our friendly wave generator. And on the properties for that, beacon type will be a yellow exclamation point. Beacon location is going to be the connected actor. And all the rest of those properties stay the same. On the dynamic trigger, new actor connection, again to the friendly wave generator. This is for this mission giver. And on the properties, target is the connected actor. Trigger distance will be 6. And then this time delayer I'll get to in a second, but we're going to set the delay time on this to 10 seconds. Alright, so this mission giver isn't going to show up until the player finishes the rescue mission, because that's kind of the sequence in the movie. And so that's all keyed off of this friendly wave generator, as I mentioned last time. So when the wave is defeated, and all the townspeople have been placed in that pen, or if you're sadistic and you've tossed them off the edge of the the world there, then this toy will broadcast the wave defeated signal, and that's what we're going to use to kick off the next mission. So on this friendly wave generator, we're going to do a new logic connection. When the wave is defeated, there's 3 things we need to do to kick off the new mission. So the first thing we're going to do is generate the wave for our next mission giver. The second thing we're going to do on that friendly wave generator is a new logic connection. When that wave is defeated, we want to turn on the radar marker for our new mission giver over here. So we're going to activate that. And then I do not want this dynamic trigger to be active until this mission starts. And so the level starter needs to turn that off. So on the level starter, we're going to do a new logic connection on catalyze. We're going to come over and turn off that dynamic trigger. Which means that the third thing that we need to do once the rescue mission is done is turn that on. So on this friendly wave generator, for the townspeople, new logic connection when the wave is defeated. We will turn on the dynamic trigger for our next mission giver. Okay, so now we'll have our mission giver in here, and she's just waiting for us to approach her and talk to her. So the mission giver, again, is going to be triggered by this dynamic trigger. So when the player approaches and talks to her, that's when this will be activated, and this is what's going to drive the start of this mission. So on this dynamic trigger, we're going to do a new logic connection when entered by player any. First thing we're going to do is come over to the text displayer that we used last time, because we can reuse this. And under the survival modes category, which I think you have to scroll down toward the bottom to get to that, we're going to have this say prepare for enemy attack. And then on that dynamic trigger, new logic connection when entered by player any. The next thing we will do is deactivate this radar marker. And then once the mission giver has basically given their mission, we want to take her out. She's over here at the old church though, and so the technique we used last time, where you leave the mission giver to go off and do the mission, isn't going to apply here, because she's kind of hanging out around the old church. And so what we're going to do is use that time delayer to remove her. So on the dynamic trigger, we'll do a new logic connection when entered by player any. We will start this time delayer, and I set that to 10 seconds a moment ago. So 10 seconds later, when this goes off on the time delayer, we want to do a new logic connection. When the delay is completed, we'll defeat the wave and take her out. And I don't think the player is really going to notice that, because they're going to be starting to fight these enemies as they're streaming into the church. So the fact that she kind of vanishes is going to go unnoticed most of the time. Okay, and that takes care of the mission giver. Now the next part of this is for generating the enemy waves. And so this thing needs to generate the waves for all three of these. And we also need to reset this counter. The counter is going to keep track of the number of waves that we face. And so on the counter, we're going to set the properties on this to be, set the count to be 9. That's the target count, so 9 waves. We need to completely defeat 9 waves, so basically 3 from each of the enemy wave generators. Visible display is off, we don't need that, and the rest of those are fine. And on each of these enemy wave generators, on the first one, we're going to set this off and off. I'm going to take this down to 2. I could put this at 0 for all of these, but this first one I'm going to leave set at 2. This will stagger the enemy generation a little bit, and I found this just helps keep the enemies coming in a little bit more of a steady stream. If you set all of these to 0, each time you defeat the wave, there's a delay before it kicks off the next wave, and so we don't really want that. And so you can leave this set at 2 if you want. You can leave it set at 4, 2, 3, or 4, and we'll set this one to 3. All of those are fine, and then for the team, we need to set this to a team. So I'm going to set this to be the blue team, because the treasure canister is going to be purple. The treasure canister needs to be the same team as the teams that these spawning chambers are doing. We set those to purple last time, so we need to set this to purple so that those enemies will ignore this canister. So on the canister, while we're right here, we're going to leave that set to 0. I'm going to take canister health to 1500. You can make this lower if you want a bigger challenge, or if 1500 is not enough for you, you can take this higher. But we're going to set this to 1500 for me. That's a good average. The team is going to be the purple team, and I'm going to leave this with the Warlock's Eye artifact, because that kind of looks like a machine compared to the other options. And since that's the purple team, these enemy wave generators need to be a different team so that they will attack it. So we've set that to be blue. The second wave generator, on the properties for this one, again, we'll leave that off, off. This one we will take to 0. Disable generation effects, and again, team to blue. We want to make sure all of these are set to the same team so the enemies don't fight each other. We want them attacking the player. And this one will set up the same way. So off, off, 0, disable generation effects, and blue team. And this last one, while we're right here, we're going to leave that off, off, take that again to 0, on, and blue team. Okay, so the dynamic trigger for the mission giver, a new logic connection when entered by player any. We want to reset our counter. On the dynamic trigger, a new logic connection when entered by player any. We want to kick off all 3 of these enemy wave generators. We're going to get them all going at once. And there's 4 on each of them, so that means 12 enemies. And that's pretty good for my Wii U. Anything more than that overloads my Wii U, because remember, we've got cannons going through the sky on branching paths, we got smoke effects running in here, we got our townsperson initially, our cast member for the mission giver, we've got that canister, so I don't want to do too much with this. If I set each of these to 5, I start to get some lag. If you're on another system and you want a little bit more challenge, you can set each of these to 5 or 6 and get some even more enemies. If you do that, you might want to bump up the health on that treasure canister, but you can kind of play with that if you want. Alright, now for each of these wave generators, we need to refresh them when the wave is defeated. And so on this wave generator for number 1, new logic connection, when the wave is defeated, first thing we want to do is increment the count on our counter by 1. So that's 1 of the 9 waves. Next thing we need to do is kick off a new wave, and we can't have this thing turn around and invoke itself, so that's why we have the logic gate here. Plus we can also close these when we're done. So we want to do an input, and then on the logic gate, a new logic connection on output. I'm going to use a time delayer here. And we'll use the default 1 second delay that's built into this. And the idea is we want to give this thing a chance to do everything it needs to do and finish up before we invoke it to do another wave. And 1 second's enough to get it doing that. And so on delay completed, we'll generate another wave. Okay, and this cycle, by the way, right now is going to be continuous. So once you start this, it's going to keep going until we close this logic gate. So that's why we have the logic gates in here, not just to help this thing invoke itself, but also so we can shut this off at the end of the mission. Alright, and each of these other ones needs to do the exact same thing. So on this second one here, new logic connection when the wave is defeated, increment the counter by 1. New logic connection when the wave defeated, input into the gate. On output from the gate, new logic connection on output. Start the delay on the timer, and on the timer, new logic connection when the delay is completed, kick off the next wave. And same thing with this one. So this is actually pretty easy to hook up. Despite the fact there's a lot of controls there, it's really not too complicated. So we're going to increment the counter. New logic connection, wave defeated. Go through this logic gate. New logic connection on output. Start the timer. On the timer, when the delay is completed, kick off the next wave. Generate wave. Alright, so now that'll give us a steady stream of enemies coming at the player. And we're going to keep going until this thing reaches its target count, which is 9. So this is going to determine when we're done with the waves over there and when we invoke the next wave. So on the counter, a new logic connection when the target count is reached. The first thing I want to do is let the player know that they've gotten to the final wave. So we're going to come over to our text displayer, And under the defense category, get ready for the final wave. On the counter, a new logic connection. When the target is reached, we want to close all of these logic gates. Now, whatever wave generator that gets kicked off that causes this thing to reach its target may have already gone through the logic gate and started the timer on the other end. I have no way to turn that timer off, so there will be one more wave from one of these after those gates are closed. But that's okay, because we still have this one coming anyway, and whatever other enemies' residuals are left from the other two wave generators, so that's fine. And then on this one, on the counter, a new logic connection. When the target is reached, last thing we want to do is kick off our final enemy wave generator for the final wave. And then when this wave is defeated, the mission's accomplished. So this will drive the end of the mission. So on this last enemy wave generator, a new logic connection. When the wave is defeated, we'll come over to our text displayer. And let's see, under the victory category, we'll have him say, "You did it." Let them know mission's accomplished. Now, there may still be some other enemies from these other enemy wave generators left to mop up, but the final wave's been defeated, and that lets the player know that. And a new logic connection. When the wave is defeated, we want to have all the players celebrate, so we'll come over to our action enforcer, have all players celebrate. And then a new logic connection. When the wave is defeated, we'll play our end of mission musical flourish. So on the sound effect generator, musical fanfare. And there we go. Just reviewing my notes. Okay, I reviewed my notes. I did forget a few things. So the same thing I forgot in the last video, I just forgot on this one again. So on this radar marker, new logic connection, when this is deactivated, we need to turn off this dynamic trigger. And then the other thing I forgot completely was what happens when the canister is destroyed. That's kind of a big part of the mission, isn't it? And the diagrams and stuff that I was following was actually from an older version that did not have the failure condition on it. So we're going to modify what I have just built, so I apologize for that. But when the canister is destroyed, we need to do several things. We need to indicate to the player that the mission has failed, and we need to reset the mission. So on this canister, we're going to do a new logic connection. When the canister is destroyed, we're going to come over to our action enforcer and have all the players lament. When the canister is destroyed, we will play an end of mission sound. So on the sound effect generator, under the musical category, I'm going to use the Doom chord. You could also use Funny Failure, but that's a little bit too cartoony for me. I don't think that fits quite as well with this theme. And then we need to reset the mission. And for that, we're going to need a couple of additional controls. I'm going to pick up this time delayer and put it back down. And I'm going to drop two more of them over here. Alright. We're going to set the first one with a time delay of 5 seconds. I'll explain why in a moment. And we're going to leave this one set at 1 second. So to reset the mission, what we need to do is put the mission giver back. which means we have to regenerate and turn the radar marker and dynamic trigger back on. We also need to remove the enemies, and doing that with these logic gates open will just cause new waves to spawn. So we need to close these gates first of all. So on the canister, we're going to do a new logic connection when the canister is destroyed. We're going to come over to each of these logic gates and close them. They may already be closed, they may not. We don't know. Not sure how far the player may have gotten into the mission, so we just want to make sure these are over and done with and closed. New logic connection when destroyed. Close this gate. Okay. And then we're going to have this kick off the first timer. So new logic connection when destroyed will kick off the timer. And that 5-second delay is going to give the game enough time to play the doom chord, have the players lament, and so on. And then we'll go ahead and remove the enemies, put the mission giver back. So on this time delayer, we'll do a new logic connection when the delay is completed. First thing we'll do is take the enemy waves out. So we'll defeat those waves. New logic connection delay completed. Defeat that wave. New logic connection delay completed. We'll defeat the last wave. Now this version of the logic has this directly talking to the text displayer, the action enforcer, and the sound effect generator in order to end the mission. And you can see those are all the connections we just made earlier. That's going to be a problem if the mission fails. We don't want these things to trigger. And so we're going to delete these links that I just made. Sorry about that. Hopefully this won't confuse you, but I'll explain it for you as we go along here, the changes that I'm making, and I'll make sure the logic diagrams are correct. Alright, so instead of that invoking them directly, we're going to have a logic gate do that. So I'm going to pick this gate back up and put it down, and we'll drop another gate over here. Alright, and so we're going to have it set up so that when this wave generator, new logic connection, when the wave is defeated, instead of invoking those toys directly, we'll go through the logic gate. And on the logic gate, we'll have this do the end of a mission. So on output, we'll have this come over to the text displayer and go down to victory and have it say you did it. We'll have this go directly, the logic gate rather, go directly to the action enforcer and have the players celebrate. And we'll also have that do the musical flourish. And by going through this gate, we can close this gate like we're doing with the other gates. And so when we defeat that wave due to the mission failing, that won't trigger the end of mission sounds and everything. So musical fanfare. And so on the treasure canister then, when new logic connection, when this is destroyed, we can come over and close this gate. So that 5 seconds later, when this time delayer goes off and defeats this wave, it'll try to go through the logic gate and it won't be able to because it'll be closed. So the mission success won't happen. And that's going to be important because this is also going to kick off next week's mission, or the next mission that we're going to do next time. Now the other thing this needs to do, now that the enemies are out, is restore the mission giver. So new logic connection when the delay is completed. we want to come over to our friendly wave generator and generate that wave. New logic connection when the delay is completed. Turn the radar marker back on. New logic connection, delay completed. Turn on that dynamic trigger again. Alright, and then once all that is done, we need to reopen these logic gates. And rather than have this do that directly, and have the chance that this may not have removed all the enemies just yet, we're going to have this, we're going to give it a little bit of time to finish cleaning itself up. So on delay completed, we'll invoke this time delayer. And then we'll have this time delayer reopen all of those logic gates. I think that's just a little bit safer, because in case there's any hiccups or anything, those gates won't open too early. New logic connection, delay completed. Open up that gate. And then one more gate. New logic connection, delay completed. Come over and reopen that gate. And the other thing we need to do is restore that treasure canister, so we can do that from this one. So new logic connection when the delay is completed. We want to come back over to our treasure canister and reset it. So that will reset it for the next mission. One last little detail. The locator for Black Cat is here inside the church. This is where I dropped it. If the player is in the church battling those enemies and the mission fails and then we respawn, it's possible that Black Cat will respawn right next to the player, which will immediately trigger the mission again. So I'm going to bring this locator outside the church. We'll put it right here. And I'll spin that around so the little blue dot is facing toward the church. So she'll spawn facing in that way. And I think that will work a little bit better. And let me double check my notes one last time. I think that is everything now. Okay, so with that, the battle at the old church is done. And yeah, that's a lot of controls. Hopefully it's not too complicated. I think it was pretty clear initially until I had to come in and put the end of mission where the mission fails and put all that logic in, but hopefully you understand how that goes. For those of you who are building this toy box on your own systems, or you want to build a similar kind of battle in your own toy box, you can find logic diagrams on my blog to help you out. The link's in the video description, and I'll make sure all of these changes are on those logic diagrams. So you'll have both the video and the complete diagrams with all the logic. Next time I'll show you how to create the final boss battle with Ultron. Until then, take care and have a great day.